His left hand gave Clarence's shoulder a little squeeze. "It's always been like you and my own son, you know. You must know that by now." Clarence wished Johnny Price and everyone else would stop calling him Itty, and he also wished his mama's name would be kept far away from topics like dogfighting. But he knew Johnny Price had just paid him a compliment, and lately compliments were hard to come by. "So, where's Nasty?" Clarence knew that Nasty was the dog Johnny Price intended to fight that night. He felt like this was the time he should say something about the fight, something that would take his mind off the fact that he could feel Mona sniffing around the corners of his mind, trying to get his attention. He tried to imagine what it was like, two dogs fighting, wondered if it was like people fighting, only with teeth and claws and no words, all sounds and pain. He wondered what made men gather around to watch it, raising animals to be killers. He thought of Mona. "Nasty's already in there," Johnny Price said, casting his gaze out over the dirt around the building, then out beyond the ramshackle street toward whatever lay beyond the orange streetlights sweating in the darkness. It was always this way with Johnny Price and his gaze. It was like he knew someone was watching him, and he refused to be surprised when they rounded the corner speaking his name. "So, you scared?" Johnny Price asked. Clarence knew this was an important question. He knew by the way Johnny Price's hand had been on his shoulder one moment but wasn't there anymore, by the space that now lay between them. "Nah," he lied, and he wondered if Johnny Price could tell. He could feel Mona listening in. He knew she could tell. "They're just dogs, you know," Johnny Price said, and then he pointed to the spot where Clarence's father was now stepping from the shadows, his hair a shimmering sunset in the amber light. "Just keep remembering, they're nothing but dogs, Itty. Keep remembering this ain't nothing but a thing." He opened up the gate, walked in, and then turned back to Clarence. "Come on now," he said, and Clarence followed him. Inside the big square fence was a smaller, lower fence that formed a kind of pen. People stood around the pen, drinking beer from cans, and music drifted out of the open door of the cinder-block building. A group of hard-haired women in high, pointy shoes stood on the building's back steps, swaying. Y stood a few feet away from them, watching them dance. When Clarence walked in, Y glanced over and nodded at him. "Where's the dog, boy?" he silently mouthed, and Clarence felt his face go hot. "There he is. There's Nasty," Johnny Price suddenly said, and he pointed to a dark corner of the pen where Clarence could make out the shape of a dog chained to a big metal stake. "I don't know where Y's dog is," Johnny Price added, spitting into the dirt. "I don't know, but that he doesn't have a dog at all." "True that," Clarence's father agreed, and he walked over to a plastic tub and pulled out 2 wet cans of beer. He handed one to Johnny Price. "No sodas here, I don't think," he said, looking around the yard. He opened his beer, took a sip, and then handed it to Clarence. "Have a taste," he said, and he glanced over at Johnny Price. "A big night," said Johnny Price. Clarence's father grunted in agreement. Clarence raised the can to his lips. Once the beer hit the inside of his mouth, he realized it tasted like what pee might taste like if you got it real cold and then poured it into a can. Not that he'd ever tasted pee. It was just the first thought that came to mind. What he really wanted was a Mr. Pibb and a bag of handicaps, but he went on drinking. 1, 2, 3 gulps on account of the fact that his dad and Johnny Price stood, nodding there in front of him, and that beyond them, over by the swaying girls, Y slumped against a railing, watching, drinking his own beer, and nodding. Seemed almost everyone was watching him and nodding. Apparently he was doing something right. "Whoa, now," said Johnny Price, suddenly grabbing the beer from Clarence and handing it back to his father.